Iraqi forces have advanced into the outskirts of western Mosul on the second day of an offensive aimed at driving ISIS terrorists from that city. It's part of an operation that began more than 4 months ago. The U.S. is providing close air support, along with some special operations forces embedded with Iraqi troops. Today, the U.S. commander of the Joint Combined Task Force said American troops are closer to the front now than at any time in the 2.5-year-old fight against ISIS.
It is true that we're operating closer and deeper into the Iraqi formation. So we adjusted our posture during the East Mosul fight, and we embedded advisors a bit further down into the formation.
National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin is traveling with Defense Secretary Jim Mattis in Iraq. She reports on the former general's return to a familiar and still dangerous theater.
Defense Secretary Jim Mattis landed in Baghdad a day after Iraqi forces backed by U.S. and coalition warplanes began a long-awaited assault on western Mosul to rid ISIS from its last major stronghold in Iraq. Artillery and airstrikes allowed Iraqi forces to advance from 4 sides. Inside the city, a terrified population was told not to come out of its homes. On his first visit to Baghdad as Defense Secretary, Mattis wanted to clarify why the U.S. is in Iraq after all these years and why it is not.
We're not in Iraq to seize anybody's oil.
Even though Trump hinted earlier this month that he would have prosecuted the war differently.
So we should have kept the oil, but okay. Maybe you'll have another chance.
When President Trump chose as his defense secretary a no-nonsense general known for his frank talk and the fear he inspires in the enemy, he chose a deferential warrior who is not afraid to speak his mind.
I think all of us here in this room, all of us in America have generally paid for our gas and oil all along, and I'm sure that we will continue to do so in the future.
When asked about the executive order banning Iraqis temporarily from getting visas for the U.S., a court has halted that order, but Mattis says in the future there will be exceptions for Iraqis who worked and fought for the U.S. military.
I have not seen the new executive order, but I right now am assured that we will take steps to allow those who have fought alongside us, for example, to be allowed in to the United States.
The former Marine general first began fighting in Iraq in 1991. He led U.S. Marines into combat during the invasion of Iraq and led them again through both battles of Fallujah. Today, as Iraqi forces accompanied by several hundred U.S. military advisors try to free 750,000 residents of Iraq's second-largest city from 3,000 ISIS fighters, the main thing on his mind were his troops.
The attack into the city is something I don't want to go into details about because I owe confidentiality to the troops who are actually making the attack, but at the same time we are very close to it, if not already engaged in that fight.
Mattis said the rules of engagement have not changed for U.S. troops advising Iraqi forces.
The U.S. forces continue in the same role that they were in East Mosul, and the coalition forces are in support of this operation. And we will continue, as you know, with the accelerated effort to destroy ISIS.
Mattis was briefed by the top U.S. general in Iraq, Lieutenant General Steve Townsend, and met the Iraqi Prime Minister, who Vice President Mike Pence had met in Munich days earlier.
Here in Iraq, the fight for Mosul will be long and difficult and won't end there. The president has given his commanders 30 days to come up with a new plan to defeat ISIS. For all of them, the clock is ticking. Traveling with the Defense Secretary, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
Alert for you, Iraqi troops moving into South Mosul as they try to drive ISIS militants out of the city's western half. It is just the latest push in the 4-month-old battle to take back the last major ISIS stronghold in Iraq. Special forces already driving ISIS fighters out of East Mosul. A U.S. Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, saying U.S. soldiers are very close to the battle areas, some already engaged.
The U.S. forces continue in the same role that they were in East Mosul, and the coalition forces are in support of this operation. And we will continue, as you know, with the accelerated effort to destroy ISIS.
Joining me now is Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell Utterback. He's retired from the U.S. Army Special Forces and a retired Colorado National Guardsman. He has served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure thing, Heather.
Off the very start here, let's talk about your experience specifically in Mosul. You just returned. You spent 2 weeks there just last month, and you brought with you some video that you were able to shoot yourself. Describe for us what you saw, the scene as it is now.
Heather, I was there researching my graduate thesis for my master's in journalism. I was able to go join the same exact officers that I advised in 2007, 2008. General Abbas of the Emergency Response Division, General Hyder of the Counterterrorism Service. These guys are the tip of Iraq's spear, taking the fight to ISIS in Mosul. Both units have crossed the Tigris River, and they're moving up on the west side from the south side. These guys are really like heroes of the country, great battlefield commanders, and every single day they and their units are engaged in combat against ISIS.
Yeah, and people may forget we have 6,000 troops, U.S. troops in Iraq. We have 450 American, they're called American advisors. What role will all of that play in this latest push?
Well, let me tell you, there are no Americans standing shoulder to shoulder pulling triggers with the Iraqi forces like we were during the surge of 07-08. All of the support from the coalition in the U.S. is further back. We're helping them with airstrikes, with artillery strikes, with intelligence and surveillance. You know, we're flying in the drones for them, providing medical care in the rear. But really, this is Iraqi forces doing it mostly on their own, in great degree on their own. I was very impressed to see it, and people need to know this is an Iraqi fight led by the Iraqis.
And they're fighting against, what, some 3,000 ISIS fighters who are there in this specific area?
Yeah, the guys say that the most hardcore of the hardcore have remained in West Mosul. Up to 3,000 ISIS fighters from all of the affiliated countries that, you know, these guys have come from. And they know they're going to fight to the death because their egress, their escape routes towards Syria have been cut off. They're really trapped in the city, and they're going to fight the Iraqi forces down to the last man. And quite literally, Iraqi forces have to kill ISIS down to the last man.
But what we're really worried about as well are all the people who are stuck there, who have not been able to get out. And we saw some of that video from you that you shot, an estimated, what, 600 to 800,000 people are trapped there?
Yeah, that's what the Iraqi guys say. Maybe, you know, half the population of Mosul is still stuck in West Mosul. ISIS uses them as human shields. This delays the advance of the Iraqi forces, who are very careful not to inflict civilian casualties. That's what's going to make the fight so much harder, is the Iraqi guys are going to have to go house to house and room to room to rescue the civilians and kill the ISIS guys. And like I said, no regard for human life from the ISIS guys. They'll kill these people as they flee under white flag. And I've
read reports of ISIS using food as a weapon against all these people as well right now. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad you made it back safely, and we appreciate your insight.
ما اشوف الاسعافات، هو طريق ترابي طويل شوي.
حاليا بس الجانب الصديق
موضوع الطائرات المسيرة نقدر نباشر حاليا لو اكو تحديد بخصوص الطائرات. اجراءك سريع بارك الله فيك.
حاليا ننشئ بالشاطئ، نعمل بالشاطئ.
Iraqi forces launching a new phase in the battle to push ISIS out of Mosul. So police and Iraqi forces now moving in to liberate the western half of Mosul with some help from U.S. Special Ops forces on the ground there. Connor Powell, live in a Middle East bureau to watch all this, and what progress are Iraqi forces making so far, Connor?
Yeah, Bill, the Iraqi forces control the eastern part of the city, and just in the last about 48 hours or so, they've now begun to move on the western part of the city, sort of the second half of Mosul. They're backed, as you said, by U.S. airstrikes and special forces troops on the ground, and Iraqi troops are making progress into that western part of the city, but it is slow going. ISIS, over the last 4 months when this operation began, has really held out a lot longer than most people expected, and there are some signs that this part of the fight, this western part of the fight, might go even slower than the first part, that eastern part. The western part of the city, the roads are a little bit more narrow. It's a little bit harder for armored vehicles to move around. ISIS is obviously bedded down in a lot of parts of this western city. This is their grand final stand. There's also concern that the Iraqi troops have really taken a huge hit in the last 4 months or so. There's some estimates, Bill, that the frontline Iraqi troops have lost about 50% of their fighting strength just in the last few months. That's a big, hard hit, but Iraqi troops are making progress. ISIS has obviously also taken a big hit in this fight as well.
More to come. Thanks, Connor Powell. An update from Jerusalem on what's